Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. I'm your host, Shana. Thanks for tuning in today. Financial Issues is a ministry that is listener and partner supported, so we thank you for all your support. We teach people about stewardship from a biblical worldview in regard to financial issues of the day, and you can partner with our ministry for as little as $132 a year and get access to our biblically responsible investment strategy that can be found on our website at financialissues.org. On today's show, we're going to talk about the most important economic data of the week, give you a quick rundown of this week's events. We're going to have our stewardship verse of the day today as well. And if you want to get your call queued up in the first half of the show, we're going to be taking some calls, 610-363-1110. If you want to get your question in today, go ahead and get that call queued up now, 610-363-1110. And you need to do it quickly. You'll be the first caller in the queue if you dial now. At Financial Issues, we help you to stay in the know about the financial issues of the day. We help to keep you abreast of what's happening in the economy and the market, and help you understand how that impacts your own personal financial issues. So as of today, January 17th, 2025, the following are the major economic events that happened this week. According to the National Federation of Independent Businesses, who survey their membership once a month and summarize the results in their Small Business Optimism Index, they reported that optimism in the small business community is on the rise. The small business community has really been taking it on the chin under Bidenomics, but they are starting to become more optimistic. The index blew past the forecast of 100.8, which anything over 100 is considered to be optimistic, and the expectation was that the read would come in at 100.8, and it actually soared to 105.1 for December of 2024. Now, that's the highest read on this optimism index since October of 2028, and it's a good bit higher than 101.7, which was the reading that we got in November. Now, this is the second month that the reading has stayed above the 51-year average of 98 due to, you got it, an improved economic outlook following the results of the 2024 election. The NFIB chief economist Bill Dunkelberg said the following about the reason for optimism returning to the small business optimism number. He said, small business owners feel more certain and hopeful about the economic agenda of the new administration. Expectations for economic growth, lower inflation, and positive business conditions have increased in anticipation of pro-business policies and legislation in the new year. Now, the net percent of owners expecting the economy to improve rose 16 points to 52%. That's the highest since, are you ready for this? Fourth quarter of 1983. The percentage of small business owners believing it is a good time to expand their business rose 6 points to 20%. That's not really great, but it's good that it's improving. In addition, 20% of owners reported that inflation was still their single most important problem. That's unchanged from November. During this past week, we also got important inflation data about the CPI and PPI, so the Consumer Price Index, which measures the rate of inflation that in prices that consumers pay, and the Producer Price Index measures the price increases that wholesalers see as they are making their goods and services. The consumer price index increased by 0.4% over the previous month, now sitting at a 2.9% year-over-year rise. That's the highest since July. The core CPI, which excludes the volatile food and energy prices, rose 0.3% month over month and sits at 3.2% rate of increase year over year. That's slightly below the anticipated 3.3%. On the producer side, the producer price index saw an uptick, increasing by 0.2% in December, primarily due to a 3.5% rise in energy costs, due mostly to an increased round of sanctions placed on Russian oil companies and the shadow fleet that's been delivering oil to China, India, and a handful of others, trying to avoid the sanctions placed on Russia at the beginning of the war. It also included a notable 9.7% surge in gasoline prices due to the same reason. Annually, the PPI rose by 3.3%, making the largest increase since February of 2023. Core wholesale inflation, which excludes food and energy, remained unchanged from November but climbed 3.5% year over year. Now, the stock markets rejoiced over this week's inflation data, with all three stock indices up to around 2% since its release and on track for a higher open today. Expectations for the Fed's reaction regarding interest rates is that there is almost no chance of a cut for their meeting this month on January 29th. The Fed's 2% target looked somewhat attainable by October, when we got the September read for inflation, when we learned that headline PCE had come down to 2.1%, almost there, almost to the Fed's target. But inflation has since reversed course, and as of November 2024, which is the most recent read that we have, core PCE, which is the Fed's number, sits at 2.8%, while headline PCE, which includes all the categories, is at 2.4. So not moving in the right direction. We won't get the December read for PCE until the end of January, after the Fed releases its decision about interest rates. So pretty much all the inflation and jobs data that the Fed is going to see is in now. Expert consensus suggests that headline PCE for December, that will be reported January 31st, will likely rise to 2.5%, up from 2.4% in November. So that's the reason that nobody really is expecting a cut from the Fed, because if inflation is back on the rise, they can't really justify that cut in rates. Core PCE is expected to remain steady at 2.8% as housing cost, or cost of rents, is continuing to decline. We got the January NAHB Home Builder Sentiment Index. It came out this week as well, and it rose 1 point month over month to 47, and that was 2 points above the estimate, but still below the critical number of 50. The drag remains on prospective buyers' traffic, which at 33 is still very far under the crucial level of 50. The present mood rose 3 points to 51, while the expectations component fell 6 points, but is still somewhat optimistic at 60. On one hand, there are hopes for improved economic growth and regulatory environment. On the other, builders are expressing concerns over potential tariffs to building materials and cost that a larger government deficit would put pressure on inflation and mortgage rates, which is what we've seen. The higher rates are not just a headache for buyers, but land is expensive, and financing for private builders remains costly. Big builders, though, are feeling somewhat better than the small ones, because balance sheets, they have cash, they have the ability to buy down these 7% mortgage rates that we've been seeing. So again, the big guy thrives while the little guy is left struggling under the cumulative effects of Bidenomics. We need more homes, but it's really expensive to buy one, especially for the first-time home buyer, and it won't get any easier as mortgage rates stay above 6%, while 3/4 of homeowners have mortgages below 5%, and 60% have rates below 4%. Nobody wants to trade in their 4 and 5% mortgage for a 7%. Insurance rates on top of that have increased 25% over the last 2 years, making home purchases more expensive. Property taxes have increased at a much higher pace too, because home prices, they're based on home prices, and home prices have increased almost 50% since 2020. Got a little bit more data to share with you to cover the rest of the week, so we hope that you're going to stay tuned. We're going to take a short break, then we'll be back with the rest of the information about the week, and we'll get right to your calls. If you want to get in, 610-363-1110.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same. Or as we pray and make peace, other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Kids need the hope of Jesus. There's so much loneliness, brokenness, isolation, and bullying. Now you and I, we have the opportunity to do exactly what Jesus said, to go and make disciples, right where they are, right inside their public school. The Lord has been building the impact of Crossroads Kids Club, and we ask for your help to pursue a vision of greater national expansion.
To join us, visit reachOurSchools.com. That's reachOurSchools.com.
Hearing Jesus say, "Well done," how to secure your rewards in heaven. Don't you want to be sure that when you get there, that you're going to have the best life forever? And that best life forever is being able to access the plethora of wonderful, escalating rewards that are elucidated throughout the book of Revelation to those who overcome. Well, that's what the book's about, friend.
Order your copy of Hearing Jesus Say Well Done today on Amazon and start living for what truly matters.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. I'm your host, Shana Bird. If you want to get your call queued up, now's your chance. You'll be the first caller in the queue. 610-363-1110 is the phone number. Partners, if you missed the partner conference call yesterday, I'm told that it is posted to our website in the conference call section. I will tell you this, we did have a little bit of a technical difficulty in the very beginning, so there was a part where my sound cut out. So if you want to fast forward through about the first 10 minutes of the recording, then you should get right to the meat of everything, get through those technical difficulties. I think, Seth, are you going to try to get
Shana, I'm going to talk with Pat about this today. So I'm speaking without having talked to her yet. But yeah, we're going to try to post the edited version of that later today. So hopefully by, I'm going to say this afternoon, we'll have the edited version so it's real clean. But we did want to just get that version up as quickly as we could so people could have it.
Yeah.
So
right. Even if we can't do that, maybe we can put a little note right under
for sure.
the recording to say just kind of save yourself some time and skip the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. Great deal.
Yep.
Well, let's continue on with the economic data that came out this week. So we are in the midst of fourth quarter earnings season. So publicly traded companies have requirements to report their results to the general public once a quarter. And we call that, when they when most of them report, we call that earnings season. So, of course, that happens 4 times a year since there's 4 quarters in a year. And earnings season has been kicked off for the results that publicly traded companies are reporting for the last quarter of 2024. The financials always tend to kick off earnings season. They're typically one of the first ones to come out and report. And the 6 major banks did kick off fourth quarter earnings season with a bang on this past Wednesday. 5 of the 6 beat on the top line. So when they report their numbers, the top line, they report all the revenues that come into their company. This is a very simplified explanation, but the revenues that come in, those are called the sales, and then they subtract out their expenses and they have earnings on the bottom line. So the top line is what comes in, the bottom line is what is left after they've paid their expenses. So 5 out of the 6 beat on the top line. Wells Fargo was the laggard with a slight revenue or top line miss, reporting only $20.38 billion against an expected $20.49 billion in revenues. But all 6 major banks exceeded analyst expectations for their bottom lines, that is their earnings per share, and all 6 of them beat. Consequently, financial stocks had some of the biggest gains among the S&P's 11 sectors on Wednesday, as we saw shares of Citigroup and Wells Fargo that each closed with a increase to their share price of 6%. Because, folks, what drives stock prices long term is earnings and sales. We can make speculations about what could happen in the economy, this and that, but at the end of the day, where people are buying real companies with real sales, real earnings, real businesses that you can see, feel, and touch. And so that is, the most important thing whenever you're looking at how to invest your money. From an analytical perspective, from an overall arching perspective, it's biblically, the biblically responsible nature, according to us. And the 6, just so you know, the big 6 are J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and Morgan Stanley. Those are the 6 big financials that I just talked about, but don't get excited about any of those because they are not biblically responsible. However, we do have 5 financial stocks on our financials buy list that are biblically responsible, and if you're a partner, you can make sure that you check those out. The markets since this past Monday are up and on track for one of the best weeks in over a month due to what the markets perceive as good inflation data and a great bank earnings report. I guess it doesn't really matter to the markets that the inflation picture is not great, as long as it comes in as expected, even if it is expected that inflation is moving higher. So the Dow is up since Monday 2.8%, the S&P up almost the same, the NASDAQ up 2.5% and headed for its best 1-week performance since early December. The pre-markets are on pace. All 3 stock indices are expected to open higher. The Dow's expected to open 65 basis points higher. The S&P 500 87 basis points higher, and the NASDAQ is indicating a 1.6% increase at its open. So what's coming next week? Well, next week will be a pretty slow week for economic data. Monday is Inauguration Day. So on Monday, we're going to inaugurate the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump. I would just ask that everyone be in prayer for a successful inauguration, a safe inauguration, and that the transition of power in this country would be very peaceful and expedient, and that the will of the people, as communicated in the 2024 presidential election, would be carried out. Earnings season continues next week. About 50 companies that make up the S&P 500, that's 10%, are scheduled to report their earnings. Those earnings are going to include companies like Netflix, Microsoft, Tesla, and Intel. So only three of the four of those are biblically responsible. But, we track, we follow the big companies just because we want to get an idea on how the economy is moving in general, because all of these companies are part of the overall economy. Now that you're in the know about the recent and upcoming financial issues of the day, we hope that you're going to learn more about how we can help you integrate these issues into your own stewardship. Find out how you can become a biblically responsible investor, defunding darkness and funding the light by becoming a partner of Financial Issues. You can learn more about it at financialissues.org. All right, so special shout out to 2 new stations on the CSN network. We have KLNY, and they are on air in Lanai City, Hawaii, and CSN radio station 89.7 FM in Washington, Indiana. So welcome. If you're listening on one of those stations, welcome to the Financial Issues family. We hope that you find great value in our program and that you continue to listen. All right, Seth, let's see if we can knock out questions.
Sounds good, Shana. Let's start with Pete from Seattle. Pete is 64 years old, a good friend of ours. Hello, Pete. Saying, hi, Shana. I know that Amazon, Shopify, eBay, Etsy, etc. are not on the buy list or even on the broad list, although Shopify screens clean for BRI. But what sector are these companies considered to be in? Would they be consumer discretionary or consumer staples? Their product lines are so broad, they seem hard to categorize. And then Pete gives a disclaimer, don't worry, I'm not buying any of these unless one happens to make the buy list someday, but I'm just curious. What do you think, Shana?
Looking at those, I believe most of them are in the sector called communication services, which, if you're looking at our breakdown of the categories, you won't find communication services. It is very hard to find companies in communication services that are biblically responsible for obvious reasons. So communications, it's going to be things like Facebook, big media companies, and, lots of those companies fail because, some of the platforms are platforms for pornography distribution, and so we're not going to be involved in that. Lots of them promote content that is very anti-family, very inappropriate for for young viewers. And really, if it's inappropriate for young people, it's probably inappropriate for older people too. As Christians, we really have to protect our gates, our ear gates, our eye gates, because what comes in can really activate our sinful human nature, and we need to be focused on the things of above and not the things of this world. So it's really hard, Pete, to find companies in that category. If there are some, we would likely just include them in technology, because they really for our purposes anyway, they really align well with what's happening in the technology space. But we don't have any right now.
Yeah, that's good, Shana. Thank you for that reminder. I was reminded of the picture of, if you want clean water in your house, you have a water line, and all of a sudden you allow engine coolant to get into that water line. It's probably not a good thing. And it's the same thing with so many of these companies here. You're allowing these things to go into your mind, and that can really poison you. So it is a great reminder.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yep. So Heather is not a partner yet, asking a good question though. Says, I currently have 2 retirement accounts through my work, still employed there. Is there a benefit to becoming a partner for me? And how might I find out if the policies I have will allow me to use your services to become more aligned with Financial Issues? What do you think?
Well, great, Heather. I hope that you will. Even if you can't apply the investment strategy to your accounts at work, it's still a great thing to become a partner to, because, whether you're using the strategy or not, when you become a partner, you're supporting the ministry. You're helping to keep us on the air. You're helping to hear more people about biblically responsible investing. So one thing that you could specifically do is contact your HR department, or really just call the phone number that's on the statement that you get for your 401k or your employer-sponsored plan, and just ask them if there is a self-directed option. Sometimes they will give you the option to have your money go into a self-directed option where then you can buy stocks. Then you would be able to purchase the stocks that are on our buy list. If not, the second option, I don't know how old you are, but a lot of times once you turn 50 or 55, you have what's called an in-service withdrawal option, where you can actually roll the money out into an individual IRA wherever you choose. Then you would be able to manage it according to whichever stocks that you want to buy or investments that you want to buy, and you would still be able to continue to participate in your employer plan and get the match that goes along with that, if indeed you have one. Well, folks, we are at the end of the short version of the show, and if you're only listening on an outlet that carries just the short version, we bid you a farewell today. For the rest of you, we want to encourage you to stay tuned. We're going to be back with more financial issues, and make sure you have our phone app or listen on podcast where you can get the full show whenever you want.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
And we're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
One of the emphases of preborn has been ultrasound in two ways. An ultrasound machine if a pregnancy clinic doesn't have one, and then an ultrasound session, which we underwrite hundreds of thousands of those. We've seen over and over again the dramatic results that when a woman encounters her baby for the first time and hears that heartbeat, she realizes the magnitude of what's happening here, that there is somebody else. That's her baby. So this is why preborn pushes out ultrasound as much as we possibly can. Preborn has seen over 200,000 babies saved, over 59,000 people come to Christ, populating earth and eternity, life for this life and life forever. Save the baby's life, but save the mother's life so that she can lead that baby to Christ. If we're bringing people into this world and the mother doesn't receive Christ and the child is born and the child lives its life and doesn't receive Christ, this is not a good end. And so we have to have the gospel as part and parcel and really the heartbeat of what preborn is.
Every day, kids all across America are coming to school with some kind of hidden pain.
I've seen kids come in who are just so confused about what's right and what's wrong, just having no idea that God loves them. And this just breaks my heart. Crossroads has the opportunity to bring the Word of God right into the public school, to reach children right where they are.
And when we see that happen, we see God changing lives.
We want to see kids not only come to Christ, but pursue a lifelong relationship with Him. And so local churches are uniquely positioned to disciple those children as they become young adults and through their lifespan.
Crossroads comes alongside a church and provides that church with a club structure, curriculum, training, and ongoing coaching for them to run these outreaches in public schools.
If you are burdened for the children of America, consider making a donation to Crossroads Kids Club. For more information, visit reachOurschools.com. That's reachOurschools.com.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Financial Issues. Thank you to Shana for pushing through those segments there. I'll be taking you the rest of the way here, along with Sam and the rest of the team here in our Philly studios. Happy to be here with you this Friday. It is, of course, the beginning of the weekend, so I hope you are looking forward to a day of worship on Sunday. I would remind you, folks, we did send out a couple cell alerts this week, CD33, TE86, both for non-biblically responsible reasons. Please act on those cell alerts if you've not done so already. Also, we had Bible study this morning. It was a good time. We were in Daniel chapter 2. We'll be continuing that next week. If you missed today's Bible study, though, and you want to go back and listen to it, that will be posted on the website, as well as the conference call from yesterday. Again, as we had mentioned, I'm going to try to get an edited version of that conference call posted today, but the whole version is up there right now. So if you go on, just skip ahead about 10 minutes or so, you should be able to get to where the feed started to be clean. So let me just remind you here, folks, of what the scripture tells us. We haven't had a chance to do our stewardship verse today. So Psalm 62 verse 10 says this: "Put no trust in extortion, set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart on them." So the verse is clear. Getting rich through extortion or robbery is no way to please God. So extortion meaning some kind of illicit means, whether fraud or something else like that. Robbery obviously is stealing, and both of those things would be sinful. No way to please God getting rich this way. On the other hand, we are reminded if our wealth does increase, which is not necessarily a bad thing, actually can be a very, very good thing. It can also be a dangerous thing if our wealth increases, because we could then be more tempted to love that wealth too much. But if it increases, we're not to allow our hearts to be captivated by these riches. Why? Because they are an empty well that does not satisfy. So we need to find our satisfaction, folks, for our souls in Christ alone, putting our trust in Him. I hope that each of you will do that today. Rather than focusing on the increase of riches, I'd encourage all of you, live as John the Baptist did. John the Baptist said during his ministry, "He, that is Christ, must increase, and I must decrease." That's a good rule of life to live by. If we can make much of Christ and be less and less like ourselves, I think we'll be doing okay. So that's my encouragement for you today. I hope it can be encouraging for you, of course. Again, Psalm 62 verse 10 is our verse for the day. Shanna mentioned the markets earlier, folks. I did want to say just quickly how they closed yesterday. Each of them in negative territory closed. The Dow Jones closed 0.16%. S&P 500 closed 0.21%, so about a fifth. And the NASDAQ closed almost a full percentage point, just under a 0.9%. Currently, as they sit, they have opened in positive territory, as they were predicting. Let me just, hang on a second. Let me just confirm here as I'm refreshing my screen. Yeah, everything strongly in positive territory here. So the Dow Jones is up 0.75%. The S&P 500 is up about 0.8% or so, and the NASDAQ really enjoying a nice day so far out the gate, up 1.4%. So that's what we're looking like here. Markets poised to finish a strong week with a strong day. So that's what we see here today. Okay, so we got a couple headlines to get to here. Folks, of course, the big news coming up here is on Monday, we will see one of the most profound things, I think, in the entire history of politics, which is the American transfer of power from one to another, a peaceful transfer of power that I think far often we take for granted in this country, and we certainly should not. This is a wondrous thing that happens, especially considering the fact that the people from whom the power is being transferred from and then to are in many ways political enemies. But the reminder here, hopefully, is that even though they're political enemies, they are not enemies in the final analysis. They are fellow countrymen. So we'll be seeing that this Monday. But we have a few headlines regarding this. Sam, I'd love to welcome you on here, buddy, and just tell us a little bit about what Goldman Sachs is saying about Trump making CEOs feeling optimistic. This just doesn't seem to be a surprise to me why he would. But what if we got there, Sam, on the eve of the inauguration? administration?
Well, as Shana talked about in the previous segments, in her In the Know segment, the banks were booming in those earnings reports, and one of them, of course, was Goldman Sachs. And a lot of these guys are attributing this to Trump, not just Goldman Sachs, and I'll get to that later, but let's take a look at what they had to say. Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon, he said on a recent conference call that Trump's election caused what he called a meaningful shift in CEO confidence. That data is backed up not just by his own opinion, but by other things that we're seeing as well. The latest Chicago Fed survey on economic conditions, for example, that showed an improved outlook for the next 12 months, while the NFIB Small Business Optimism Index in December rose to its highest level since October 2018. As I said, Seth, this is an opinion shared by a lot of people in the banking industry and really in Wall Street in general. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, he noted in a recent earnings report that businesses are, quote, more optimistic about the economy, and they are encouraged by expectations for a more growth agenda and improved collaboration between government and business. By the way, the Business Roundtable's Q4 2024 CEO Economic Outlook Survey, something we talked about after Trump was elected, that rose by 12 points after Trump's election from the previous quarter. That's the highest level of optimism in over 2 years.
Yeah, so, Sam, I think from a financial perspective, we have every reason to be very excited about this incoming administration. Every reason. And I think it comes back to the fact that Donald Trump, and listen, love him or hate him, for better or worse, and you have heard us disagree with Donald Trump sharply on this show over various things. Love him or hate him, this guy's a businessman. Yeah. He's a businessman. That means he knows how to manage people. He knows how to manage money. If anyone here, I mean, all of us have had some experience with business people, whether you've been one or whether you have worked for one. And so, to be a good businessman, you have to be able to have this really good, strong outlook over a lot of different things. You have to know how to manage money, and you have to know how to deal with people. You have to know how to be kind to people and treat people well. Donald Trump is a businessman more than a politician. Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, Seth, I think a lot of people, they remember Trump from The Apprentice, so they kind of think he just plays a businessman on TV. But remember, he was a businessman for decades before he ever got into television. Yeah. So that's at the core of who he is. If you want a reminder of what Trump is actually like when it comes to business and managing assets, I'd encourage you to go look up, I think it was maybe 2001, 2002, Trump testified before the Senate about the building of the new UN headquarters in New York City. And they called him in to see why they're coming in so over budget and what he, as a New York real estate developer, would do differently. And his mastery of the industry is really on display there. And he talks for a good 30 to 40 minutes. You just have to watch a little bit of it just for that quick reminder of this guy really knows what he's talking about when it comes to the economy and how the big businesses operate inside the U.S. economy.
Absolutely, for sure. And of course, we saw it in his first term, and I'm confident that we'll see a lot of that same economic success in the second term. Of course, Sam, there is this aspect to deal with as well. There's going to be some cleanup that has to take place, and we actually have a question that we'll get to in just a moment about that. But yeah, I do think Trump's his internal businessman, I think, is really going to be helpful for him and for the economy as well coming in here. So be interesting stuff. Speaking of that, Sam, we have heard some things about Trump's External Revenue Service. I know this isn't really a long headline here, but what can you tell us about this quickly?
So we know Trump's the tariff man. I think he said that it's one of the most beautiful words in the English language, tariff. I could probably think of some more beautiful ones, but sure, it's a good sounding word. So he's establishing this new External Revenue Service. So I guess the ERS instead of the IRS to handle all the incoming tariffs coming into the country, as he plans to really jack up those prices on foreign companies abroad to bring in more revenue into the country. So he announced on Truth Social this week, I am today announcing that I will create the External Revenue Service to collect our tariffs, duties, and all revenue that come from foreign sources. Currently, that's handled through Custom and Border Patrol. So this is a little bit of a shift that we're doing it through a separate organization. Trump says that it will be created on January 20th. That would be Inauguration Day, though many people say that might not exactly happen because this isn't something that Trump likely can do just with the wave of his hand, because he's trying to create a new agency. Congress is probably going to have to step in here.
Absolutely. Yep. So it'll be good to just keep an eye on that as well, folks. A couple things to look at for next week as well. You heard Shana mention earnings season. We got some economic numbers coming out next week. We also have the inauguration day. But don't forget as well, our ruling overlords are going to be meeting in Switzerland to discuss how which rations we'll be allowed to eat of bugs and crickets and different things like that, and how much water we'll have to share with trees, which will now be considered humans as well.
Yeah, Seth, you mentioned that we have to live like John the Baptist. So maybe we might literally have to live like John the Baptist.
Yeah, he must increase, I must decrease, and you're going to eat crickets also. Yeah. So no, but that will be meeting next week as well, the World Economic Forum. So of course we'll be keeping an eye on some of the no doubt silliness that'll be coming out of there. Hey, a quick note I wanted to share with all of you, something that we would appreciate so much here at the ministry. We would love to hear about how your partnership with Financial Issues has impacted your life. You can call in if you want to. I do know there's a lot of people who are a little bit, nervous about calling in. So if you're not as keen to call in and talk on the radio, take a moment, visit our YouTube stream, or go to the financialissues.org live stream and just share your story with us. These testimonies are such a blessing and encouragement, and they really do help us inspire others to join the mission of biblical stewardship. So we just want to thank you all so much for that. If you feel led to share that testimony, go ahead and put that up on any of our social media streams. You can also do it on the financialissues.org live stream, which right now is quite lively, as it usually is. So great to see you all, so many of you on the chat here. We'll be back in just a moment for more financial issues. We do not have an ag report today, by the way, so keep on praying for Craig, but we'll be back right after this break. Stick with us.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
I found out I was pregnant when I was 21 years old. For me, I was scared, I was shaking. They do an ultrasound, and that's when everything changed. When I saw my baby, and when I heard her heartbeat, that was it. We've seen the hand of God ever since we stepped into the pregnancy center.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Pharrell came to Crossroads as a fourth grader. His name had been brought to my attention by the school principal. She was concerned about the direction he was heading.
I remember I wasn't the best kid. I got into trouble a lot.
He became a very active part of Crossroads Kids Club.
Mr. Engel, he was the leader that really impacted my life in so many ways. I honestly didn't want Crossroads to end.
We would invite all the students to come to our youth group here at Waterfront.
I felt God saying, come home, come to me. It felt like I was set free.
And I'll never forget the day when we had the privilege and the honor to baptize Pharrell.
I hugged Mr. Engel. I don't know if he understands. I'm truly, thankful to have him do the whole journey. If it wasn't for Crossroads, I probably wouldn't be in the place that I am right now. I wouldn't be a follower of Christ.
Help reach more kids like Pharrell with the hope of the gospel. Visit reachOurSchools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Good to be here with you all, of course. Financial Issues. Eddie on the chat asking actually a good question. They want to know how the Palisades fires were started. Eddie, the truth is I don't know the answer to that. I have heard really sadly that there have been some reports over in Los Angeles that some people are actually starting fires as well, kind of taking part in some of the chaos, I guess. So it is just really sad stuff, folks, and a good reminder to just be praying for God's hand of mercy over there.
I think there's a lawsuit against one of the
power companies too,
so.
potentially as being the source of at least one of these fires.
Absolutely. And, it goes without saying too, Sam, I mean, we can't just brush over the fact that, sadly, the governor of California's behavior, leadership during all this has been just absolutely abominable. It really is sad, folks, and we do need to be praying for sure. So we'll try our best to keep you updated on how that whole situation is going over there on the West Coast. But as of right now, Sam, let's get to a question here. We got this question, I believe, yesterday from Brian and Kara in Rock Island, Illinois. What do we have from B&K?
Hang on there. We got to pull up the different section of my notes here. But yeah, so Brian and Kara from Rock Island, they say, does FISM predict the current regime, that would be the Biden administration, will undermine the economy for the next? That'd be the Trump administration.
Yeah, B&K, that's a good question. I kind of think they already have. Sam and I were talking about this before the show. It seems like if you look back at the last 4 years, they've kind of spent 4 years undermining, especially from an economic perspective. Now, if you're asking, is there some kind of conspiracy that started when Trump won the election to say we're going to try to make everything as hard as possible for Trump when he enters the office? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know if it's a conspiracy even. We know that Biden's been very vindictive about this whole thing, which is weird because I thought they were happy that Trump won because then he could say, see, Kamala lost, I would have won.
Right.
I'm the only person that ever beat Donald Trump, but now he's behaving like a child and kind of being revengeful. I think the most evident thing that he's done that shows he's kind of upset about this whole thing is banning basically all the offshore drilling along the entire coast of the United States. And that's something that legal experts say might cause a headache for Donald Trump because that might be something that he can't just undo. He might need some congressional help with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exactly right, Sam. We're seeing that. Also seeing, I think, we've seen more money sent to Ukraine since then. We've seen all these things that were kind of staples of the economic Biden administration continuing and in some ways being ramped up a little bit. B&K, it could just be the current regime doing what it's already been doing, definitely. And so to be honest here, I mean, Trump has a mess to clean up for sure. Regardless of if there's this plot that's happened over the last several months, or what I tend to think it really is just a continuation of what we've seen the last 4 years, which has been really an economic disaster.
And if you think about it, the incentive structures are gone for Biden. He has no reason to pretend to be moderate in any way because the election's over. So now he's thinking, I can just do what I wanted to do anyway because there's no repercussions.
Absolutely, which is really sad, folks. And you know what, Sam, there's a good reminder here for us. All of us are going to be in jobs where someday we will finish. You'll retire someday. You'll leave a job someday. Can we please finish well? Please finish. Don't burn the place down on your way out. I don't care. And listen, I've left jobs before where, we left on maybe not the best terms. It's still not okay for me to just ruin everything for the next person coming in. There's nothing Christ-like about that at all. I believe it's a biblical principle to be a good steward of what is still under our care, to hand it off well. And so I think there's a good lesson here from the Biden administration of what not to do when you're leaving a job. Because let's face it, this current regime now, you can argue about how it happened, but this current regime got fired from their job. They got fired from the people who employ them. That's the taxpayers. We voted them out. They got fired. And so to behave this way on your way out, I think it's a little egregious.
Yeah, it's been very petty from what I understand. I even heard that Usha Vance, that'd be J.D. Vance's wife, was trying to reach out to Kamala Harris because she's going to be living in her house now that they're going to be the VP family, about child-proofing the house, and Kamala Harris couldn't even be bothered to talk about that, just on a human level, to say hey, how can we best take care of our kids? You had kids, what do you know what this house is like, so could you tell us? And she's like, nah.
Yeah, it's just, it's like a parable, an object lesson for how not to finish well. Folks, you got to finish well. Finish well. We will all be finished with the jobs that we're in someday, whether you die or whether you retire or whether you leave and find another job. So just a good reminder. Absolutely. Sam, a couple more headlines we can get to here. What can you tell us about Trump's Treasury pick?
So it's hearing season. It's also earnings season, but it's hearing season.
That's right.
So Trump's picks for his various cabinet members are appearing before the Senate this week. We saw Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense, Pam Bondi for AG, and then yesterday we also saw Scott Bessent. He's going to be Trump's Treasury pick, or I guess he is Trump's Treasury pick, and he was laying out his reason for why he should take up the job and also making the pitch for the Trump economy. And I do have a clip from his opening statement here.
Today, I believe that President Trump has a generational opportunity to unleash a new economic golden age that will create more jobs, wealth, and prosperity for all Americans.
And what that golden age is going to entail, in order for it to work, is going to be a re-implementation of those 2017 tax cuts, something that he says is going to be critical, a day one job for Congress to do, or else this whole thing just isn't going to work. Here he is.
This is the single most important economic issue of the day. This is pass-fail. That if we do not fix these tax cuts, if we do not renew and extend, then we will be facing an economic calamity. And as always, with financial instability, that falls on the middle and working class people.
He's 100% right about that. The data does seem to bear that out, Seth. I quoted this data earlier in the day, or earlier in the week, rather, but it bears repeating again. A recent study from the National Association of Manufacturers shows 6 million jobs could be lost if those tax cuts are not reinstituted.
Yeah, that's a good update on there for us, Sam. Thank you. Any news, Sam? I hadn't seen this. Also, by the way, you mentioned Pete Hegseth earlier. Was there? Did he get confirmed?
Oh, the process is still ongoing. But we have not yet had the vote yet. But I imagine he's going to, especially with the way the Democrats were behaving in a very catty fashion with him and Pam Bondi. Frankly,
absolutely,
they were both very set upon by the Democrats in a way that, in my opinion, was unprofessional and unbecoming of the Senate. So I think even the more moderate Republicans who might have been on the fence about those two picks are probably going to be incentivized to vote for them just based on how insane the Democrats were behaving.
Yeah, absolutely. Good reminder there also. Absolutely, Sam. And there was one more thing here I wanted to just get your thought on, Sam. We saw a donor list for Trump, some of his top donors here. I think this is interesting to kind of look at here to see what some of these big companies, big organizations are doing. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so it really looks like that the big companies believe in what Scott Bessent is saying there, that this is going to be a golden age for the U.S. economy, and big business is lining up behind Donald Trump. This is a new phenomenon. Typically, big business has been left-coded the last couple of years, getting behind everything Joe Biden and Barack Obama have wanted, but that appears to be changing. We've talked about that with Meta and other companies, but there's even more than you might think. Boeing, Google, Hyundai, FCA US, Microsoft, Amazon, Uber, Ford, Toyota, and Robinhood, General Motors, Intuit, Meta, as I said, and Delta Airlines. They've all donated $1 million or more to Donald Trump's inauguration fund. So they're really getting behind Donald Trump as the new big guy. They see there's a new sheriff in town, and one that it might benefit to them if they cozy up to a little bit. And part of me thinks that there might be a little boot kissing here because they have treated him so badly that they might want to make amends out of perhaps some fear that he might take a little bit of revenge against them.
I would think so. It's kind of fun to watch, Sam, because this is like old-fashioned politics. Like, this is stuff that you think you'd see in like a medieval kingdom or something like that. The new king comes to power and everyone wants to pay their respects to him and offer their sword to him, and it is pretty funny. A good reminder for us, folks, this is all good news here. The companies that Sam mentioned there, though, this has no bearing on whether or not they're biblically responsible companies. A lot of this is political, to be sure.
Could be cynical, even.
It could be. It's exactly right. It's good news. I mean, it's wonderful to see something like this. For example, Meta, which I believe censored Donald Trump during the end of his first term and into the Biden term, is now basically kissing his ring. The outcome, I think, is good because it's going to foster free speech. Hopefully, it might be good for us too because it means that we won't get kicked off of Facebook as easily, which is great. So it's just a good reminder there to know know what is truly biblically responsible. See, we're so much more than politics, folks. So much more than politics. Politics are important, believe me. We have a certain political bent, but the reason we have that bent is because we believe that it is based in the Christian worldview. We are Christians first, and our Christian worldview is what determines our politics. And our Christian worldview also is what determines our investment strategy. And so we are not politically based investors, although you may see our investment strategy line up much more heavily with a certain political angle. The reason for that is because our investment strategy lines up with the Bible, folks. That's what's most important. That's the ultimate determiner and the ultimate factor for this here. So, Sam, great stuff, man. I appreciate you bringing that all that up to our attention here. Folks, thanks for joining us today for the show. It was a fun show, and it was a fun week as well. And Lord willing, we'll do it again next week. I do hope that you'll be able to gather with your church body on Sunday morning for a day of worship with the people of God. And then, God willing, we'll be back together again on Monday for more financial issues. Until then, remember, it's all His. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with the money that God has given to us. It is His money after all. God bless you all, and we'll see you on Monday, God willing, for more financial issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.